Blackouts had
Malls
also
and
been
shelters.
enforced in many urban areas to make it difficult for enemy planes
Yeah,
to
I've
locate
heard this
their
happens.
targets. Beyond these preparations, though, life had continued with some semblance of normality.
Hello guys, welcome to our channel. Today we are going to watch The Blitz, a short documentary and fascinating horror. These two words you don't normally take with each other. Like horror is something very bad and fascinating is something wow. How can you say fascinating horror? And also the description is like on the 7th of September, a year into the World War II, the Germany launched an unprecedented bombing raid on London. So we will see, and the thing is like we have seen like how devastating was World War II. We have seen Germany videos where like the whole cities have been risen down. We have seen Poland videos, so many countries videos where the whole cities have been risen down. So we will see what happens in this video.
On the 7th of September 1940, a year into World War II, Germany launched an unprecedented bombing raid on London. Until this point, German bombers had focused mainly on military targets. Now they turned their attention to civilian ones in an attack that killed 450 and injured 3 times that number. Moreover, this attack marked a drastic change in German tactics. From this day forward, London would be bombed almost every single night for the next 57 nights.
What?
In a sustained campaign of destruction that became known as the Blitz.
So this was Blitz.
Oh.
57
In 1940,
nights.
France surrendered to German invaders. This left Germany, under the command of dictator Adolf Hitler, to focus its attention on Britain. Hitler had a strong desire to carry out a full-scale invasion of Britain, but there was one obstacle that stood in his way: Britain's Air Force. The Royal Air Force, or RAF, was formidable. Though it had far fewer aircraft than the German Luftwaffe, its pilots were highly motivated to defend their country, and were bolstered by volunteers from around the world. Britain's use of the new technology of radar was also much more advanced than Germany's, giving them a significant edge when it came to responding to incoming attacks. On top of this, German attackers had many different objectives: destroying facilities on the ground, engaging in the air, and targeting and blockading ships in the waters around Britain. British fighters, on the other hand, were focused almost entirely on engaging the German threat. This singular purpose, combined with technology like the highly maneuverable Spitfire, allowed Britain's relatively small force to withstand one German attack after another.
Wow.
Germany's superior numbers, however, eventually started to wear down the RAF. Were it not for a chain of events that took place in August 1940, it's likely that Germany would eventually have prevailed. It was late in August when some German bombers accidentally dropped their payloads on civilian areas near London. Up until this point, Germany had aimed mainly for military targets, and so it was a shocking development that they should appear to target civilians.
And that is bad.
In response, on the 25th of August 1940, Britain bombed Berlin, enraging Hitler to the point that he commanded a change in strategy. German planes would now focus on decimating British cities, London in particular. The British government had long feared that Germany would launch a campaign against the civilian population. Some preparations had already been made. In 1939, thousands of children had been evacuated from urban areas to the countryside. Shelters had also been distributed to city dwellers. Anderson shelters were buried in back gardens, while Morrison shelters could be installed inside the home. Blackouts had also been enforced in many urban areas to make it difficult for enemy planes to locate their targets. Beyond these preparations, though, life had continued with some semblance of normality. People went to work as normal, gathered in pubs and cinemas, and went about their daily business in cities that were, for the most part, intact. This all changed on the 7th of September 1940, a day that would later become known as Black Saturday. On this day, a massive German raid killed over 450 people and wounded more than 1,500 in London
1,500
alone.
injured.
Shocking and devastating as it was, Black Saturday was just a taste of what was to come. After this date, bombing raids continued almost every night. Population centres such as Liverpool, Bristol, Manchester, Cardiff, Glasgow and Southampton were targeted, but London was subjected to by far the most intense bombing campaign of all. These raids were devastating. Whole streets were obliterated. Churches, schools, cinemas, hospitals and pubs were flattened or consumed by flames. Air raid sirens rang out every night, sometimes multiple times each night.
So scary.
Most citizens were, on a daily basis, exposed to death, destruction and scenes of absolute horror. They lived their lives ready at a moment's notice to flee to shelters, where they would spend hours huddling cold and afraid as explosions rang out through the city above.
So sad.
When the all clear finally sounded, they would emerge to fight fires, clear rubble, bury the dead and treat the injured, knowing that, in all likelihood,
Again,
the
that same thing will happen
again
tomorrow.
the next night.
For
and the
2
next,
months.
And the next. Many famous London landmarks were damaged but not destroyed. Buckingham Palace, the Imperial War Museum, the Tower of London, the London Zoo, St Paul's Cathedral, and the Houses of Parliament were all hit but survived,
Wow.
in no small part thanks to the heroic work of firefighters in the city. While many famous buildings were saved, thousands of ordinary homes and workplaces were not. The Docklands area of London, home to many working-class families, was particularly badly hit. The nearby docks were a desirable target, and so attracted many bombs. This combined with a shortage of space in shelters and very few resources for rebuilding bomb-damaged areas to make the Docklands one of the places most severely affected. Despite the unending horror of the Blitz, though, life carried on. People went to work and some pubs, theatres and cinemas remained open. People were often pictured carrying on with their day-to-day work despite the devastation around them.
Wow.
There are many examples of people
The
using
courage.
humour as a way of dealing with the
In the event of invasion, we
conditions
said
of the
close for
Blitz,
half an hour.
and pictures from the time appeared to
Half an
document
hour.
a sense
Really?
of cheerful endurance. The attitude that prevailed, at least according to official accounts, was typified by the now famous morale-boosting campaigns run by the British government, with slogans like, "Your courage, your cheerfulness, your resolution will bring us victory.
The best thing is
And-
unity.
Keep
Yeah.
calm and
And
carry
carry
on."
Oh, this is that?
Yeah, that.
This Blitz
Oh.
spirit is something that is
Keep
often
calm.
This is
fondly
the meme
remembered
I
and
thought.
has become a
Day is
point of
coming.
national
Ah.
pride, but at the same time it represents only some of the story. Subjected to nightly near-death experiences, many people suffered a range of mental health problems: night terrors, bedwetting, nervous collapse and psychosis. Some gave up on seeking shelter when the air raid sirens sounded. In the blackout-darkened streets, crime was at an all-time high, and there were few resources to combat it. Fear and nervous tension were pervasive. Personal records from the time reflect the fact that almost everyone was terrified and suffering, but had no choice but to carry on with their
They were
lives.
ignoring all the attacks and keep going on.
The fact that they did carry on was viewed by the government as evidence of high morale among civilians, and this was used extensively for propaganda purposes. In fact, the stress and suffering of the British
This is
people was
crazy.
made worse
Oh
due
my
to the government
God.
not providing
This is
adequate
hell.
shelters. Anderson shelters were damp and cold and would provide protection only from shrapnel, and not from an actual bomb blast. Morrison shelters would protect those inside from collapsing buildings, but not from the fires or thick choking clouds of dust that often
Yeah.
followed. Some dedicated shelters were built using incorrect materials, resulting in them simply crumbling when hit, providing little or no protection. There was great demand for deep underground shelters, similar to those
That
that the
were the
government
most
had
safe.
constructed for its
Yeah.
own personnel. But the government was reluctant to provide these, fearing that if they were available to ordinary people, those ordinary people might retreat underground and never leave,
Why?
thus hampering the war effort. As a result, Londoners were initially forbidden from using the tube network for shelter.
Oh.
Desperate, many Londoners did so anyway by buying tickets and refusing to leave the station during air
Oh.
raids. It was only
That is
after
so
an
smart.
escalating
Yeah.
series of protests that the government relented and allowed ordinary people to shelter in tube stations deep below ground. These proved popular and were soon fitted with toilets, beds, medical facilities,
Wow.
and more.
Nice.
Nice.
These shelters, of course, were not without their hazards. Some years later, in 1943, 173 people died in a crush at Bethnal Green underground station, the worst single loss of civilian life during World War II to take place in the UK. As shelters were developed and people adapted to the hellish uncertainty of life under Blitz conditions, the bombing raids continued up and down the country. London was hammered night after night, while attacks on other cities were more sporadic but were devastating when they came. On the 14th of November 1940, the city of Coventry was devastated by a particularly prolonged raid, which flattened 4,300 homes.
4,000 homes!
The destruction was so comprehensive that some German leaders would thereafter use the word Coventriet or Coventryed as a byword for total destruction.
Coventry.
In May of 1941, after an unimaginable period of near daily raids, the Blitz came to an end,
Finally.
pulled off by Hitler himself. He now wished to send his forces east to fight the Soviet Union, and could not spare the air power needed to continue the relentless attack.
Otherwise, he could have gone on and
Unbeknownst
on.
to him, however, the Blitz that he had overseen had already changed the course of the war, though not in the way he had hoped. Hitler's shift in focus from hitting military targets to hitting population centres had allowed the Royal Air Force a chance to recover, rebuild, and reinforce.
Yeah.
Wow.
Had the Luftwaffe continued to strike military targets, Britain's forces would have been decimated. As it was, they now stood a fighting chance against the German war machine. The people of London, Liverpool, Manchester, and other British cities who survived the Blitz survived a living nightmare, sometimes with very little protection or support. Their suffering, at least, was not for nothing.
Bombing for 2 months. Like, you cannot even imagine that. Like, Hitler was going all in on that, and the reason that he stopped was because he wanted to attack another place. That is the
Yeah.
reason he stopped. Otherwise, he was just going all in on it, and like 59 days. And how British people were like this, that they thought that okay, you bomb us, but we still go to our work. And that cafe line is something that will stay with my heart. Like, there is an air bombing going on. Like, one bomb to your head and you're gone. And like, he's saying that okay, whenever the invasion will happen, we'll close the cafe for half an hour and then you can come back.
Now I'm honestly hating more and more Hitler because what he has done, and also he is like, he just understood himself as like a god, like whatever he wants to do, just he will do. Like, it was just his mind. Okay, so I'm just it's everything is for entertainment, like for him. Like, okay, so I'm tired of this London, let's go to east side and then we'll bomb there and we'll just have, I think, wars, bombs, and these all the things, and you know, looking at the people, like they are suffering and they are crying, they're crying, screaming, all these things are just entertainment for him.
So what do you guys think about it? Do let us know in the comment section below. So do like, share, and
Subscribe.
bye.